September 13th, 1943, 0800 hours, the Gulf of Salerno. The world is a nauseating gray. Gray sky, gray water, the gray steel deck of Landing Craft Infantry 219. For Private First Class Jack Riley of the 141st Infantry Regiment, the whole world smells of diesel fumes and salt water and the sour tang of fear. You can taste it on the back of your tongue. He gripped the cold steel of the gunwale, his knuckles white, and watches Italy draw closer. It doesn't look like the pictures on the postcards. It looks like a jagged brown line of hills spitting smoke and fire. The soft underbelly of Europe feels impossibly hard from here. Around him, the men of the 36th Division are a study in tense silence. Some check their M1 rifles for the 10th time, the metallic click of the bolt and nervous tick. Others stare blankly at the churning wake of the LCI, their faces pale under their helmets. The vessel pitches and rolls, a constant, sickening rhythm that has turned the stomachs of even the toughest farm boys from Texas and Oklahoma. Jack, a kid from Akron, Ohio, feels his own breakfast threatening to rise. He swallows hard and focuses on the noise, the deep thrum of the engines, the distant, crumping thunder of naval guns from the battleships far out at sea, and a sound that makes the hair on his arms stand up, the intermittent, high-pitched whine of a Luftwaffe fighter bomber, a Focke-Wulf 190. They call them the butcher bird. He glances over his shoulder at the small cluster of prisoners they'd picked up from a surrendered coastal pillbox, a handful of weary, middle-aged German soldiers in dusty Feldgrau uniforms, and with them a woman. She can't be more than 20. Her blonde hair is pinned up messily under a field cap, and she wears the uniform of a Luftschutzhelferin, an air raid auxiliary. She isn't armed, isn't defiant. She just looks exhausted and terrified, her blue eyes wide as she watches the shell splashes walk across the water towards them. She's the first enemy woman he's ever seen up close. She looks like a girl you might see working a soda fountain back home. Suddenly, the world rips apart. A high, screaming whistle descends into a deafening roar. It's not a bomb, but an 88mm shell from the shore. It doesn't hit the LCI directly, but explodes in the water 50 feet off the port bow. A colossal fist of seawater and steel shrapnel hammers the side of the craft. The deck heaves violently, throwing men like dolls. Jack loses his footing, his helmet clanging against a bulkhead as he goes down. Shouts turn to screams. The air fills with the sharp, coppery smell of blood. The LCI lists hard. A wave born from the explosion crashes over the side, a solid wall of green water that sweeps across the deck. It tears men from their handholds. It smashes into the prisoners, who have nothing to hold on to. Jack sees the German woman go down, vanishing under the torrent. He scrambles for a hold, his fingers finding the edge of a ventilator shaft as the water tries to pull him into the sea. The craft groans, a deep, metallic agony. It's taking on water, fast. The skipper is yelling orders that are lost in the chaos. Another shell screams overhead. The invasion has barely begun, and for the men on LCI 219, it feels like the end of the world. Jack pulls himself up, gasping, shaking the water from his eyes. He can see the shore, so close yet so far, and he can see bodies in the water. American, German, it doesn't matter. They're just men flailing in the churning sea. Then he hears it. Over the roar of the engines and the crack of distant rifle fire, a sound that cuts through everything. It's not a man's shout. It's a high, piercing scream of pure, undiluted terror.
The scream slices through the auditory chaos of the battlefield. It's a raw, animal sound of a soul staring into the abyss. Jack Riley, clinging to the listing deck of the LCI, scans the turbulent water. The sea is a hellish soup of oil, debris, and struggling men. He sees a helmet bobbing, then a life vest. He sees a fellow GI from Charlie Company trying to help a wounded friend. But the scream comes again, closer this time, laced with a desperate plea in a language he doesn't understand, but a tone that is universal. Then he sees her. It's the German woman. Her field cap is gone, her blonde hair plastered to her skull. Her heavy wool uniform and leather boots are acting like an anchor, pulling her down. She's flailing wildly, her arms slapping at the water with panicked, useless strokes. She's not swimming, she's drowning. Every ounce of energy is spent in a frenzy of fear. For a moment, you see the world from her perspective. The sudden, violent shock of the cold Mediterranean, the suffocating weight of her clothes. The sky above is a smear of gray smoke and weaving aircraft. The shore, the hope of solid ground, is an impossible distance away. The faces of the American soldiers on the crippled landing craft are grim, distant blurs. She is utterly alone, and the ocean is a vast, indifferent monster pulling her into its depths. Her terror finds a voice. Hilfe, bitte, Hilfe. Then, in broken, heavily accented English, a phrase learned perhaps from a movie or a book, a phrase that transcends all battle lines. Don't let me die. Please, don't let me die. Her voice is ragged, choked with the seawater she's already swallowed. It's not the cry of a soldier. It's the cry of a child. On the LCI, the American soldiers stare. For a split second, there is only hesitation. This is the enemy. The same enemy whose comrades are firing the 88s that just crippled their boat. The same enemy that is trying to kill them right now. You train for months to see that uniform and feel nothing but aggression. You drill and drill until the person inside the uniform disappears. But her plea shatters that conditioning. You can't train away the sound of a young woman begging for her life. A Navy corpsman, a corporal named Peterson, with Doc scrawled on his helmet, points. Jesus Christ, she's going under. Something breaks inside Jack Riley. It's not a thought. It's not a decision. It's a primal human impulse that overrides every order, every bit of training, every ingrained lesson about friend and foe. He sees a life being extinguished, and he moves. He sheds his helmet and ammunition belt in 2 swift motions, the heavy gear clattering to the deck. His sergeant yells his name. Riley, what in God's name are you doing? But Jack doesn't hear him. He takes a running step and dives over the gunwale into the cold, churning water. The shock of the sea hits him like a physical blow, stealing his breath. He surfaces, sputtered, and fixes his eyes on her. She's only 20 yards away, but it looks like a mile. He starts swimming, his strokes clumsy in his fatigue uniform, his boots feeling like blocks of concrete. He can hear the sergeant yelling behind him, can hear the continued crackle of gunfire from the shore. He ignores it all. There is only the woman, her frantic struggles growing weaker. He gets closer, close enough to see the absolute terror in her wide blue eyes. He reaches out a hand, shouting, "I've got you, calm down." But she doesn't see a rescuer. She sees another uniform, another enemy. As his hand touches her shoulder, her panic redoubles. She lunges at him, grabbing his neck with the impossible strength of the terrified, and drags them both down into the silent green gloom.
The world goes quiet. A muffled emerald chaos. Jack's lungs burn. The German woman's grip is like iron around his neck, her fingers digging into his skin. Her eyes are wide open, inches from his, but they see nothing but her own terror. They are sinking. He can feel the immense pressure of the water, can see the dark shape of the LCI's hull above them. He struggles, pushing against her, but her panic gives her inhuman strength. He has to break her grip, or they will both drown. With a surge of adrenaline, he wrenches his head to the side and shoves his palm hard against her chin, forcing her away. He kicks for the surface, breaking through with a desperate, ragged gasp. He sucks in a lungful of air that tastes of salt and diesel. For a second, he just treads water, his heart hammering against his ribs. He looks for her. She surfaces a few feet away, coughing, choking, but still flailing. He knows he can't approach her from the front again. He remembers the life-saving lessons from a lake back in Ohio. You come from behind. He swims a quick circle around her as she struggles, coming up behind her where she can't grab him. He hooks his arm under her chin, pulling her head back and clear of the water, and wraps his other arm firmly around her chest. "I have you," he says, his voice low and firm. "I have you. Stop fighting." She struggles for a moment more, a last burst of panicked energy, then goes limp in his arms, her body racked with shuddering sobs. The fight is gone, replaced by utter exhaustion. He feels the dead weight of her in the water, the sheer physical burden of keeping another human being afloat. And in that moment, she is no longer the enemy. She is not a Lufschutzhelferin. She is just a girl, and he is a boy, and they are both trying not to die in the middle of the Gulf of Salerno. The battle hasn't paused for their private drama. A Stuka dive bomber screams down from the clouds, its siren wailing. Jack instinctively tries to curl himself around the woman, a futile gesture of protection. The plane strafes the water 100 yards away, the sea erupting in a line of angry white geysers. The noise is deafening. Then another soldier is there beside them. It's his platoon sergeant, a grizzled Texan named Martinez. He'd followed Jack into the water. "All right, Riley, you damn fool," Martinez grunts, taking the woman's other side. "Let's not make this a habit. I got her." Together, they begin the slow, agonizing tow. There's a life raft floating nearby, overturned but still buoyant. That's their target. The swim is a brutal effort against the chop. Jack's arms and legs feel like lead. The woman is a dead weight between them, her breathing coming in ragged hitches. When they finally reach the raft, they cling to its side, too exhausted to try and climb aboard. They just hang there, gasping for air, rising and falling with the swell. For a moment, there is a strange, suspended peace. The woman's head is lolling against Jack's shoulder. She turns her head slightly and looks at him. Her eyes are no longer wild with terror. They are filled with a bottomless exhaustion. And something else he can't quite name. A flicker of disbelief, of dawning, confused gratitude. The boy in the enemy uniform just saved her life. The propaganda posters didn't prepare her for this. Just as the moment settles, the roar of another engine cuts through the air, this one much closer. A Higgins boat, an LCVP, is churning towards them, its ramp half lowered, men aboard waving them in. Salvation is at hand, but it's still in the middle of a killing field, and getting out of the water will be another battle entirely.
The Higgins boat maneuvers clumsily in the choppy sea, its flat bottom slapping against the waves. Hands reach down for them from the gunwale. "Give her here!" a sailor yells over the roar of the engine. Getting the woman out of the water is a brutal, graceless affair. She's a dead weight, her waterlogged wool uniform adding another 50 pounds. Jack and Sergeant Martinez shove from below, while two sailors haul from above. For a moment, she's suspended between the sea and the boat, a pitiable bundle of wet cloth and limbs. Then, with a final heave, they pull her over the side, and she collapses onto the metal deck in a shivering heap. Martinez is next, then Jack, hauled aboard by rough, anonymous hands. He sprawls on the deck, every muscle screaming in protest, and coughs up a lungful of stinging salt water. The boat is crowded with other men pulled from the water, some from their LCI, others from different craft. There are wounded men moaning softly, and huddled near the bow, 3 of the other German prisoners, their faces masks of stony resignation. Doc Peterson, the corpsman, is already kneeling beside the woman. He cuts away the sodding fabric of her sleeve to check for injuries, his movements efficient and impersonal. He works on her as he would any American casualty, his focus narrowed to the task of preservation. He wraps her in a coarse GI blanket. She shivers violently, her teeth chattering, but her eyes follow Jack. A profound silence hangs over the small group in the boat, an invisible bubble in the cacophony of war. The other GIs stare at the scene. They see the German uniform. They see the enemy they were sent here to kill. But they also see a half-drowned girl, no older than their sisters back home, being cared for by one of their own. The simple, stark reality of it short-circuits the wiring of combat. The hatred, the aggression, it all seems distant, absurd. What do you do with that? Jack pushes himself into a sitting position, his back against the vibrating hull, and just watches. He feels a strange emptiness. The adrenaline is gone, leaving a deep, bone-aching weariness and a confusion that feels heavier than his wet uniform. He risked his life. For her. Why? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. The boat's ramp scrapes against sand with a jarring crunch. They've reached the beach. The world explodes back into focus. It is organized chaos. Military police are directing traffic, bulldozers are clearing paths, wounded are being carried on stretchers to a casualty collection point under a flapping Red Cross flag, and everywhere the sharp, continuous crackle of small arms fire from the low hills beyond the beachhead. The battle is raging. This is not a safe zone. This is the front line. "All right, let's move. Clear the boat," an officer bellows from the shore. The able-bodied men jump over the side into the knee-deep surf and slog onto the beach. Medics come for the wounded, and a pair of grim-faced MPs take charge of the prisoners. They pull the German woman to her feet. She stumbles, still wrapped in the American blanket. As they lead her away towards a holding pen, she looks back over her shoulder one last time, her eyes finding Jack's across the chaotic expanse of sand. There is no time for a word, no gesture. There is only a fleeting, silent acknowledgement that something profound and inexplicable has passed between them. Then an MP nudges her forward, and she is gone, swallowed by the machinery of war. Sergeant Martinez finds Jack standing there, dripping and dazed. He claps a heavy hand on his shoulder. "All right, Riley, welcome to Italy. Let's move. The war ain't over." Jack bends down, his muscles screaming, and picks up an M1 Garand handed to him by another GI. The cold, familiar weight of the weapon is a shocking contrast to the human life he was holding just minutes before. He looks up the beach, towards the smoke and the noise and the fighting. But his mind, his soul, is still out there in the cold gray water. The reality of the beachhead asserts itself with brutal finality. The intimate drama in the water is over, erased by the urgent, overwhelming calculus of combat. Find your unit, find cover, get your weapon ready. Jack Riley falls in with the remnants of his platoon. A sergeant shouts, giving him direction, purpose. They move off the sand, past wrecked vehicles and the grim, blanket-covered shapes of the men who didn't make it. They scramble into a hastily dug trench at the edge of an olive grove and immediately start improving the position, their shovels biting into the hard Italian soil. The work is automatic, a physical rhythm that quiets the mind. But it doesn't work.
not for Jack. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees her face. He hears her scream. He can feel the phantom sensation of her panicked grip around his neck, the dead weight of her exhausted body in his arms. Later, as the afternoon sun casts long shadows and the fighting subsides into sporadic sniper fire, he sits cleaning his rifle. A fellow private, a kid from Waco named Miller, nudges him. "Heard what you did out there, Riley. Crazy SOB. She was a kraut, you know." Jack doesn't look up from his rifle. "I know," he says quietly. Miller shakes his head. "Well, you did what you had to. Best to forget it. Got a long way to go." But how do you forget it? How do you reconcile the order to kill with the instinct to save? The war had trained him to be a weapon, to see a Feldgrau uniform and nothing else. But for 10 minutes in the Salerno Gulf, he had been something else. And the memory of it feels like a wound, one that doesn't bleed and has no name. What Jack Riley doesn't know is that he was not the only one watching. On another vessel nearby, a U.S. Coast Guard photographer's mate named Victor Jorgensen had raised his camera. He couldn't capture the entire sequence, the desperate plea or the struggle in the water, but he caught the moment just after. A photograph of a young, terrified German woman, her face a mask of shock and relief, being hauled from the sea by the anonymous hands of American servicemen. That single frozen image would transcend the chaos of the day. It would be published in magazines back home, a stark, haunting testament to a moment when shared humanity defied the logic of war. The photo would have a title, "Don't Let Me Die," immortalizing her plea, but her name, her story, and Jack's would be lost to the larger narrative. This is the unseen wound of combat. It's not about the fear of dying. It's about the burden of surviving and the things you are forced to see and do. It's the moral injury that comes from a world where all the normal rules are suspended. A soldier is taught to dehumanize his enemy because it is psychologically necessary to kill him. But the moment that enemy reveals their own fragile, terrified humanity, the moment a girl in a uniform screams for her life, that psychological armor cracks, and it never fully heals. The young woman would have been processed, interrogated, and sent to a prisoner of war camp, one of millions of displaced souls whose individual fates are footnotes in the grand history. Jack Riley would fight his way up the bloody spine of Italy, through Monte Cassino and Anzio. He would learn to shoot without hesitating. He would see his friends die. He would be forced to become the hardened soldier the army needed him to be. But the memory of that day in Salerno would remain, buried deep inside. It was a reminder that war is not fought by armies, but by people. It is a collection of a billion individual moments of terror, cruelty, and sometimes, in the most unlikely of circumstances, a flicker of inexplicable compassion. In the cold, churning waters off the Italian coast, the order to kill was briefly, miraculously, drowned out by the instinct to save a life. And that paradox would be the truest story of the war.